of February 2026, and what's happening in Iran in the revolution that's been happening since December 29th of 2025 is a lot of waiting to see what will happen next. We know that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu met at the White House last week on Wednesday, I believe, and their meeting, which was supposed to last about an hour, which lasted more than 4 hours, covered a lot of different topics. Obviously, Iran is the primary focus of what they talked about, the situation that's happening there, what the possibilities are, and that's kind of all we know. We've heard a lot of, well, we'll see kind of language. Either the deal will happen or it won't. Any deal that would be done, as I've said before, is, for lack of a better word, unholy as hell. In a non-religious sense, just wrong. You don't do a deal with a dictatorship like Iran after everything they've done. You don't make a deal with them to let them stay in power. But that is apparently the option that the United States is working towards. They want to make a deal, or at least the administration says it wants to make a deal. And this is exactly why I've been skeptical about this whole thing from the beginning. Because at the end of the day, President Trump likes to negotiate deals, whether they're good or bad. He would rather not have to send people to do any military fighting, and I understand that. It makes sense because you don't want to have to send people into harm's way unnecessarily. That's certainly true. But you have to understand, Iran is not just a threat to its own people, even though that is, in my view, certainly reason enough to get rid of that dictatorship, or to help get rid of it, right? The U.S. would not, or should not have to invade Iran, right? They don't have to actually put many thousands of troops on the ground in Iran to overthrow the dictatorship. What needs to happen is enough leverage has to be given to the people so that the people of Iran can finish the job themselves. Because they do have the numbers overwhelmingly if they decide they want to change their government by literally physically overthrowing the dictatorship. So the US and its allies, Israel and other countries, would not actually have to send troops on the ground in Iran, nor should they, frankly. It's just a matter of, can the US and its allies do enough kinetically to enable the Iranian people to be able to finish the job themselves? And the answer is, well, it depends who you ask. If you ask me, I think absolutely they should. And again, why? Well, because the head of the snake is not just spreading fear and oppression and dictatorship of a tyrannical regime that uses extreme violence against its own people. They spread terrorism around the region, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Israel. They try very often to launch attacks towards Israel. They've done it many times directly as well as indirectly. In Yemen, they also spread terrorism further in Africa by funding groups like Boko Haram and other Islamic State groups and Al-Qaeda groups across Africa. So Iran is not just spreading terror against their own people and fighting against Israel, right? Those are just two of the places that they're doing this, out of the many places they're also targeting the United States and Europe. Right? They have cells in Europe and in the United States who literally wait for essentially orders or events to happen to carry out attacks. Right? We've seen this time and time again across Europe, and we've seen a number of attempts in the United States. So it's incumbent on the U.S. to protect U.S. lives. Well, how do you do that? Well, if the dictatorship in Iran does not completely change its ways, which any realistic person knows isn't going to happen, they're not just going to give up their dictatoring ways. They're going to keep being bad actors. They're going to keep using force and repression. They're going to keep forcing people to say, yeah, we're Shia, even though most of them don't identify as Shia when you ask them personally. They just do it because the government forces them to say it. Otherwise, it's their end. You need to get rid of the regime. So that's why I'm calling on people to go to the petition I created on change.org, which is like, a very well-established website for public petitions. I made mine a global petition so that everyone can sign it. And it's a very simple petition. And I realize it's not some formal, legally written document in, like by lawyers, etc. It's just, I wrote a very simple petition that I call on President Trump to use military force to force the ouster of the Ayatollah's regime. So anyone can sign it. I'll put the link in the description. Probably in a few hours when I'm back at my workstation. And we will see how that pans out. But basically,